Former president also taking aim at Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, posting a statement on his Truth Social account that Republicans should replace him immediately. Meanwhile, a super PAC aligned with McConnell is canceling ads for GOP candidates in Arizona less than 3 months from the midterms. What could all this mean for November? NewsNation correspondent Joe Khalil live for us in Washington with a closer look. Joe?
Yeah, so President Trump did slam Mitch McConnell, but McConnell is just reacting and reading the same polls that we're all seeing. There is a momentum shift at this point toward the Democrats. Like, Republicans are still heavily favored to win the House, but not by as much. Democrats feel that they've closed the gap after the Roe versus Wade decision and some legislative wins. They feel enthusiasm is now on their side.
As the midterm races heat up, money talks. This week, former President Trump feuding with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and getting personal after a GOP super PAC aligned with McConnell cut back roughly $8 million for campaign ads in Arizona. A sign Republican Senate leaders don't have much faith in Blake Masters, their parties, and a Trump-backed candidate. McConnell making no secret of doubting his own party's chances to win back the Senate.
Senate races are just different. They're statewide. Candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome.
This after the National Republican Senatorial Committee cut back roughly $13.5 million for ads in 4 key battleground states, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Nevada, earlier this month. The cuts come as Republican Senate and gubernatorial candidates in battleground states continue to slide in recent polls. Decision Desk has most polls showing Republican Dr. Oz behind 5 points in Pennsylvania. The Oz campaign floundering, going on the attack this week, saying, quote, if Fetterman had ever eaten a vegetable in his life, maybe he wouldn't have had a stroke. His Democratic opponent, John Fetterman, pushing back directly, responding, quote, I know politics can be nasty, but even then, I could never imagine ridiculing someone for their health challenges. In the race for Pennsylvania governor, another bump in the road for Trump-backed Republican Doug Mastriano, after this 2014 photo of him in a Confederate uniform surfaced. Reuters reporting exclusively that the Army War College where he worked gave the faculty the option to dress as a historic figure. Mastriano, the only one who chose to dress as a Confederate. Elsewhere in Georgia, Republican Herschel Walker behind 2 points. The Walker camp this week in the doghouse, you might say, for an ad claiming Democrat Raphael Warnock lied about owning this dog. A dog Warnock never claimed to own, but rather featured the pup in an ad of his own last year. Democrats more hopeful this week after a special election to fill a House seat in upstate New York went their way.
Enthusiasm gap has gone away. And then we've passed a lot of really good legislation this summer. There's no reason for us not to be optimistic about November.
So all of this, Natasha, is to say that, look, we are still in August, and while we're getting closer to the midterm elections, a lot can happen and a lot can change still between now and November. So we should lay that out now.
Yeah, certainly true. And Joe, you mentioned that special election in New York this week. Why is it that so many people, both Democrat and Republican, are keyed in on that particular race?
Yeah, that was one that both parties were laser focused on for a couple of different reasons. One is just the demographics of the district. It is a battleground, truly a battleground seat. You had Obama win there, and then Trump won there, and then Joe Biden won there. So it goes back and forth. It was also that both parties poured a lot of money into it. It's after the Roe versus Wade decision. Both parties were able to sort of take national campaign issues and plug them into this race. So essentially, they were testing out their national messages. And in a race where Republicans were favored at one point by 10 points, the Democrat ended up winning. That is why Democrats took that race and afterwards felt they had a lot of momentum and confidence afterwards, and why there are some Republicans looking at that race and seeing real reason to worry heading into November.
All right, Joe Khalil live for us in D.C. Thank you. And to help us break down the Republican infighting and the latest from the campaign trail ahead of the midterms is White House columnist at The Hill and NewsNation political analyst Niall Stanage. Niall, great to see you as always. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Natasha.
So, Niall, you heard it from Joe Khalil, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell pulling money for Trump-backed candidates. Will the former president get the blame if the candidates he endorsed lose this November?
I think he will. Certainly he will, from allies of Senator McConnell. McConnell and Trump famously have a very fractious relationship. They just about tolerate each other. I mean, Trump has criticized him in very vigorous terms, not just these past few days, but for a long time. But the point here is the perception, at least, that the former president has backed many of these candidates who are having difficulties in winnable Senate elections. And you've mentioned some of them already in the newscast tonight. Herschel Walker, Mehmet Oz, Blake Masters. All of these are Trump-backed candidates, candidates who arguably would not have become the Republican nominee were it not for the former president, and who now run the risk of losing exactly the kind of seats the GOP needs to win.
Well, and Trump, as he does, is slamming McConnell, calling him scared, calling McConnell's wife crazy in several Truth Social posts before calling on McConnell himself to be replaced. I mean, this can't be good for the party, right, Niall?
No, that's right. I mean, this is the split that we have seen play out so many times before between the Trump MAGA wing of the party and what used to be perceived, at least, as the establishment of the party. Now, I would argue that the Trump wing has, in fact, overrun the old establishment, and people like Mitch McConnell are now in the minority in terms of their following among Republican voters. The point, though, that you quite rightly raise is divided parties rarely do well in elections. Voters quite understandably think, if you're fighting among yourselves, what are you going to be able to do for me and my family and my concerns? So those divisions are really problematic from the GOP perspective.
And the once clear signs of a Republican advantage are harder to see right now. Are GOP candidates losing some steam, and what specifically has changed?
So a few things have changed. One that I think is being a little underplayed in the media, though we did see it in the New York race last week, is the salience of abortion as an issue. If you look at the opinion polls, Natasha, since the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade, Democrats have closed the gap pretty much from that day forward. Now, there have been other things that have been going on at the same time. Gas prices have dipped a little bit from their peak. That's obviously good for President Biden. The other thing is that some crises, like the infant formula crisis that we all remember talking about a month or so ago, have faded. So those things have changed. There's obviously an increased focus on the midterms, and Democrats are trying to make the most of the legislation and the other actions that they have taken recently.
Well, let's zero in on that upset in New York you just mentioned, where the Democrat who campaigned on abortion rights, did win over the favored Republican candidate. In a moment, we're actually going to speak with another dark horse Democratic congressional candidate who's perhaps hoping for a similar upset. What do you make of this? Is it just a blip and an outlier, or can we really read something into what happened there in New York?
This, to me, is one of the rare special House elections that does actually carry nationwide implications. Now, I'm not saying that every single race will proceed along those lines, but the reason why this race is important in New York is not only the fact that it's a bellwether district, but the fact that we saw two competing visions about what the election is about. The Democratic candidate trying to make it about abortion rights, the Republican candidate trying to make it about the economy, and to some degree, President Biden. The fact that the Democrat won a bellwether with that argument is really quite worrying for Republicans, because their midterms campaign is premised on the idea that the economy will be the most important issue. If that's not true, or if that's at least a fallible thesis, that has to be a source of concern to the GOP. Well,
and last question for you. Perhaps if Roe v. Wade is energizing some voters, and we also know the news this week, the White House wiping out up to $20,000 in student loans for those with a Pell Grant. What kind of swing could these two things give the White House and Democrats?
Well, in the case of abortion, one of its potent potential political impacts is on suburban voters, perhaps female suburban voters in particular, the increasingly narrow band of the country that is persuadable one way or another. They might feel less inclined to vote Republican, more hospitable to the Democrats. The student loans one politically is a more complicated matter, because To me, that raises just two of the big issues that we see fought out in different ways again and again in our politics, which is basically the Democratic argument: government is here to help, it is to ease the burden of some people, and the Republican argument saying, well, the government shouldn't be spending our money, spending taxpayers' money willy-nilly. Now, I make no judgment at all on the validity or otherwise of either of those arguments, but it's just that there is a very obvious clash there, and we don't yet know how it's going to play out.
That's very interesting. Niall Stanage, thank you so much for that context. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.